Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the OT Lifestyle Movement Podcast. I'm Rhiannon Chris, occupational therapist, personal trainer, and founder of OTLifestyleMovement.com. Today on the podcast, we're talking all about the OT role in aged care and dementia. We are speaking with Brooke Moore, an occupational therapist and the director of Holistic Occupational Therapy, an OT practice in South Australia that provides aged care and dementia-specific support in both residential and community care settings. Brooke is on a mission to help break through the stigma of aging and dementia and help her clients to feel valued members of society where they can live rich and meaningful lives. Welcome, Brooke.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
It's awesome to have you here. The first thing that we always do on the podcast, Brooke, is we hit the rewind button. So we love to get an understanding of how you came to do the work that you're doing today. So if you can take us in that time machine, I'd love to hear your story.
Yeah, so I think for me, it all started back in my second year of uni. Aged care wasn't really a sexy topic at uni. A lot of the other students wanted to work with peds or in stroke rehab or brain injury rehab. But for me, aged care was always something that I was interested in. So there were always aged care placements available. So I took up those, and I also thought that it would be a good idea to get a job in the healthcare field whilst I was studying, just knowing that I was, eventually going to be working in the field, and it'd be nice to have some experience. So I got a job as a personal care worker at a residential aged care facility. That was, second year. And there was a man who lived at that facility with dementia who I think was pivotal for me in terms of wanting to work in dementia care. His name was Jack, and he had sort of moderate to advanced dementia, and he would constantly walk around the facility trying to get out of the place, walk into other people's rooms, in inverted commas, refuse showers, refuse support from carers. And he was really just living a nightmare. And for me, I was quite fresh. I think I was about 19, and I really just didn't know how to support this man. And I think a lot of my other colleagues and the other carers really didn't know how to support him either. And it really just sparked something in me to really want to change Jack's life and make his life better. So it started me on an adventure to learn more about dementia myself, and try and work out how we can support people like Jack to live a better quality of life. That's sort of where it all started. And after I graduated from uni, I actually worked in mental health. That was, sort of my first job out of uni, and I always found that I would come back to aged care, in some way or another. So I eventually got the older person's mental health clinician role, and then I dabbled in a bit of residential aged care work at the same time too. And I think there was just always something in me that wanted to come back to aged care. And I think, that experience working as a personal care worker really started me on that adventure.
Yeah. Well, let's dive into it. What's the role of occupational therapy in aged care? What does it look like? If we're not learning about it in uni and we don't have much understanding of what our potential is, what does it currently look like if we were to step into work in aged care as an OT?
I guess it depends on where you work, but for us in community aged care, the traditional OT role really focuses on a sort of consulting type role or an assessment type role, where you'd go into the person's home, you'd do an assessment, hopefully you'd be able to do a follow-up home visit on what you've recommended, and then you sort of close the books, I guess, if everything is sort of going well. So there's a really heavy assessment sort of approach in community aged care, and I think a lot of that has to do with just limited funding in aged care, and also I think the role of OT isn't valued probably like other professions, where other professions may regularly see a client fortnightly or monthly, whereas OT isn't seen to be that profession that has those regular sessions with the person.
That's interesting, because I mean in pediatrics it's very different, and I'm wondering how in aged care. I mean, can we circle back to the assessments? What sort of assessments? What are you assessing?
A lot of our referrals come from home care providers or home care coordinators. So they're sort of like your case manager who coordinate care for someone living at home. And a lot of the referrals that we get are around, home modifications, falls prevention assessments, looking at a person's capacity to remain living at home and if they can do that safely and what might be the barriers for them. So yeah, it's fairly broad. A lot of equipment referrals. So yeah, we're starting to sort of, when I first started in aged care and community aged care, a lot of the referrals that I was getting were mainly for home modifications and equipment. But we're now trying to sort of change how particularly our service is viewed and what we can offer. And now we're now sort of starting to offer assessments around cognition and supporting people to remain living at home, but not just looking at how we can modify the environment by home modifications or putting in equipment, but how can we maybe train the caregiver on communication approaches, how can we link them into doing some more meaningful activities in the home and in the community. So
is it still a very reactive sort of model where someone has a fall or there's an injury and then we are called out and then we're coming in, rather than that proactive approach where we're just really trying to infuse support in their life before they get to that stage where they need us?
I think there's a bit of both, and I think in my experience it's definitely come down to we get a lot of referrals from home care providers, home care coordinators, and I think a lot of the time it comes down to the individual service. But there definitely is a reactive approach. Definitely. Like we get a lot of referrals after a person has been admitted to hospital and when they are discharged, or if they've just had a fall, when potentially it could have been prevented if we'd been out there earlier. I think it is changing. I think, in aged care, a hot word is reablement, wellness and reablement. And I think, there is a real focus on reablement, and I think that has sort of changed the way providers are looking at, I guess, the input of allied health. And traditionally allied health is, we've just been seen as, we do one visit, we provide some recommendations, and then it's the carers or the carers that are doing the work. But there is, a bit more of a focus on really bringing in the allied health professionals and focusing more on reablement and rehab.
Interesting. I have never heard, I don't think I've heard of the term reablement before. Can you tell us what that means, what that is?
I can't give you an exact definition, but I think it's really just around looking at how we can enhance a person's function in the home, or no matter what condition they have or what they're experiencing. I think it's really just looking at what can we do to really support them to be able to function at their highest level of function. So in whatever that might look like.
And you said now you're doing a lot of cognitive assessments. Is that something that's not traditionally done in this space? Or because I remember I worked up on the general medical wards as a new graduate, so that's going back like 13 or so years ago now, and there were a lot of cognitive assessments in hospital. So I'm wondering if this is usually translates to the community as well, or whether it's just something that's sort of done in the hospital before they go home to ensure that they've got that capacity to do all their tasks at home.
we get the odd referral for a cognitive assessment. I think a lot of your cognitive screening assessments are done in the GP clinics, or a lot of the home care providers would have done them on their in their admission process anyway. So it's more, I think, when we get the referrals for a cognitive assessment or cognitive screen, it's more around, this person's had a change in function. What does that look like? And then how can we best support them? And that's where we might use different cognitive screening tools to help form that picture. So it's not something that we do, we don't get referred just for cognitive assessments. It's part of, I guess, the intervention.
Yeah, absolutely. It's something that is part of the holistic approach that we might assess in terms of looking at the bigger picture.
Yeah, that's it.
And what sort of screens do you use? Like, are they standardized? Are they just non-standardized screening tools?
So we use the Allen's assessment a little bit. It really depends. I mean, I don't love the pen and paper assessments. We do use them, like, your mockers and your mini mentals, your fabs. We will use them if we think it's needed, but I've just had a few experiences in the past where you'll use those assessments and you can really see the anxiety on a person's face, and you can really see that it causes that distress that often isn't necessary. And I think we can always, as OTs, we've got quite a few tools in our toolkit to look at how a person is functioning, and it's not always necessary to do your pen and paper tests. So yeah, we don't use them regularly, but if we, for example, if we're needing to justify for a geriatrician referral or something like that, we might put a screening score in that letter, in the recommendation, but we try and stay away from those tests. Yeah, the Allen's is a really good one. It's the leather lacing assessment. It's a bit more of an activity, and it's less, I think, confronting.
Mm-hmm. I think about this a lot in terms of our standardized assessments and how relevant they actually are to the client. If I take my mind back to the mini mental, that was one that we did up on the wards to assess, cognition, like what is their mental status. And to be honest, sometimes if I was asked half the questions, I wouldn't remember, penny, table, apple, or whatever it is. It was like just learned. Or the prime minister, or the date. Like if you're not working, you don't have a calendar, and you're not kept up to date, and things change so often. And I think, what is the relevance to that person's life? If it's not relevant to them, why are we bringing these stock standard assessments, giving them a score, saying that they don't have capacity or whatever it is? Isn't it better that we take them home and see how they function in their natural environment and what their capacity is when they've got all their resources and the supports that they have? Like, are we doing a disservice to our clients by just asking them a few questions and giving them that pen and paper test?
Yeah, I agree 100%. I've thought about that a lot since working in aged care, and I used to use those assessments a lot, and now I just I think, exactly, what's the point? What is this actually? What does the score actually tell us? 27 out of 30 or 25 out of 30, that's a score. That doesn't mean anything. Exactly. And you're right, you can get so much more information from the person and how they're functioning by observing them in their own home, in their own environment.
One of the things I know you're excited about, and I'm excited about as well, is the potential of occupational therapy in this space, and how we can really make an impact and enable participation in meaningful occupations for our elders. These are people who have so much wisdom, and I love older people, and I love listening to their stories and their narrative, and they have such a rich history. And I know beyond this traditional scope of OT, which is that equipment prescription, that assistive technology, that the cognitive assessments, those sort of bread and butter things, I really feel like there's an expansive space that we can be stepping into and doing things differently. Can you tell us what this looks like for you? Because I know this is something that you're passionate about as well. So take it away.
Yeah, definitely. I would love to see, like other health professionals, where people look at OT as, people that they want to see regularly if they need to see an OT regularly. I'd love to see, other aged care services looking at OT as, a profession that can really add value ongoing for a person, particularly living with dementia. And it's in the clinical recommendations for dementia care, having, occupational therapy and ongoing support with interventions that OTs do, every day. So I would just love to see OT being valued a bit more. For us, that looks like, if I think about a client, say with a home care package, living in the community, rather than just going out there and doing that, assessment and then maybe a follow-up, but seeing them maybe fortnightly or monthly. We've just started implementing the COPE program, the care of people with dementia in their environment. So that's an evidence-based program that looks at supporting a person living with dementia and their caregiver over sort of around a 4-month period, over 10 sessions, where you work with them to really try and look at ways that they can continue to manage in their own home, continue to do things that are meaningful to them, and really look at some of those challenging situations and help the caregiver to manage and reduce some of that overwhelm that the caregiver experiences. So we've started to implement that, which has been really good. But, again, the funding is really quite limited with aged care when you look at it compared to NDIS, some of the packages that NDIS participants get. And so we've been looking at sort of some creative ways in how we can still offer a service like that, but maybe in a sort of group setting. So we've linked with a local organisation here in Port Lincoln, an aged care organisation. They're a non-for-profit, and we're looking at some grant funding to try and partner with them to be able to offer an 8-week group program that looks at interventions similar to what the COPE program offers, but in a group setting. So we're trying to sort of, broaden out and expand, I guess, our impact. And like you said, look beyond the traditional OT role. Yes, there's always a place often for home modifications and equipment prescription. That does form, a lot of what we do, but it's not the only thing that we can offer. And I think, looking at some of those other interventions is going to be really important moving forward.
Yeah, exactly. And we have an aging population. Like, people are living longer. There's more and more people around the world who are, at that stage where it's like, do I go into an aged care setting? Like, at that point in their life where they're really questioning things. And for me, this is something that I was reflecting on in preparing for this podcast. And my nana passed away last year, and it really gets you thinking, like, when people are at that stage towards the end of their life and they might have a few more chapters left, that the core of occupational therapy is occupation. And one of the things that we can focus on is spirituality. And this is when people who are older start to think about, who am I? What legacy am I leaving? What good have I created in the world? They start to ask all these questions around spirituality. And on reflection, I just think there's so much more we can be doing in this space as well, because yes, maybe the broken hip, we come in and we think that's the biggest issue, or we think the broken elbow, and we make all the environmental modifications and they can function. But maybe we need to ask them about their story and their life and how they're going. And maybe that spirituality part is the thing that they really need help with the most out of everything. And I think it's just such a special time that we can be spending with these people in the last few chapters as they write their life. And I think as OT, as we're always helping people to write their life story. How do they want it written? And especially in the last few chapters of their life, like, what do they want to write? How do they want their life to look? How do they want other people to perceive them and remember them for? So I think it's a really special job. Like, I think there's so many different areas of OT that I'd love to work in. And this is something that definitely, is a very special area.
Definitely, I'm nodding in agreement. I really think having conversations with people, I've had quite a few conversations with older people who get to that stage in their life where they go, right, I'm ready to die. I'm ready. I'm happy with how my life has turned out. I'm happy with what I've done. And I just think, what is it that gets them to that point in their life where they, accept death and they're not scared of it. And I think a lot of it comes down to, having had purpose in their life and feeling like they've contributed in some way and being at peace with, what they've accomplished throughout their life. Those conversations are really interesting. And I think, as a younger person, how could you want to die? Like, there's so much in life to do, and but I guess when you get to that stage, and I think that's I guess it'd be a really nice feeling to know that you've made the most of your life. And
100%. And even looking at interests, I feel like this is probably another area that we could focus on more, is like, what are their interests? What brings them joy? How can we inject more of this fun? It's interesting. My husband and I were having a conversation the other night, and I can't remember exactly what it was about, but I said, how long do you think you'll live for? And he looked at me and he just said, it's not how long I think I'll live for, it's how long can I have fun for? And it just hit me, and it just felt like such an OT thing to say. It reminds me of that quote where it says, medicine adds days to lives and occupational therapy adds life to days. It's about, how much can we enjoy life, like the quality of our life. And I think too, as people get older, they may lose their hobbies, or they can't engage in them. They can't participate in the things that they used to do because they've got challenges and barriers stopping them from doing that. And I think that's so important, because I think that spark that you're talking about, in people that sometimes goes, is because they don't have anything to live for. They feel like there is no meaning in their life, or they're just ready, to go. And that breaks my heart. That breaks my heart to see that. And I feel like this is a space that we can step into, is help people with their interests. Like, what are they passionate about? Or what were they? How can we get them back doing that in ways that supports their current function? Modifying things, changing the environment, adapting the task, like really core OT stuff that we learned in uni, but applying it to the aged care, applying it to that person sitting in front of us.
100%. And I think, as people get older, their roles change, and they're not needed as much as they used to be. And I guess a lot of people tend to start doing things for them. I think about, just my grandparents and my parents and my aunties and uncles really wanting to do everything for my grandparents. And, thinking about Christmas Day, my grandparents wanting to get up and help do the dishes and things like that. And everyone's saying, no, sit down. You don't need to do that, trying to be nice. But, that doing the dishes for older people really provides them with that sense of, I am still needed and I am still contributing. And I think we really need to take a step back and look at how can we still support older people to still do those activities that help them to feel needed and to feel like they're still valued on this earth for a reason.
Totally. And just even that they have capacity to do that. Like, I can do this, I'm still independent in this. Don't take that away from me.
Definitely. Yeah.
I did some research, and according to the World Health Organization, there are 50 million people living with dementia around the world, and there are about 10 million new cases every year. 10 million new cases every year. Huge. I know my auntie was actually diagnosed really young. She was in her 50s, so she had the early onset dementia. And yeah, I'm wondering if this is something that you're seeing more of, the early onset dementia, and then we can get into a few more topics around this. But is that something that you're seeing? You're seeing that early onset?
Yeah, we do see, we do have quite a few clients living with early onset dementia, sort of in their sort of 50s and 60s. But, dementia can, early onset dementia can happen well before that. Some people in their 30s have it. So, dementia doesn't necessarily discriminate based on age. We know that, your risk of developing dementia does increase as you age, but there certainly are a lot of younger people living with dementia. And that's just a whole nother a whole nother topic, I guess. There's so many complexities that come with younger onset dementia. These people are still in their their working years and often have to give up work, and so financially it can play a huge toll on families. But yeah, it's definitely out there, and a real problem. And I think also, looking at dementia, it's often seen to be an older person's disease. So a lot of the services and supports are aimed at older people who may be in their 70s, 80s, 90s. So, looking at residential aged care, for example, it's not suitable for a younger person to be living in a residential aged care facility. Yet we don't really have any other option for a younger person living with dementia who may need 24-hour care. So yeah, there's lots of barriers in that sense as well.
So on the topic of dementia, how do we support people with dementia to do the things that they find meaningful? What does life look like? And just give us a bit of an idea and paint a bit of a picture of a person's life with dementia, and then our role in that.
Yeah, I think, I've heard this quote before that, you meet one person living with dementia and you've only met one person living with dementia. And I think, that's a really important message, that, it's so broad, it's so different. Someone's experience of dementia is different to the person's experience with dementia that's sitting next to them. But typically, I think what tends to happen is that if you look at, leisure, productivity and rest, say, for example, if we're looking at sort of those components, what tends to happen for someone living with dementia is that they start to sort of do a lot of the rest activities. So they might have trouble with their starter motor. A lot of people will say, or carers will say, they just can't get their starter motor going, so they tend to sit a lot. They may have trouble with initiation and starting those activities. They actually may just lose interest in certain activities. They may have that real apathy. So I think a lot of it comes down to us really trying to look at things that still give them that spark. They may not be able to do things like they used to, but how can we break down tasks in their everyday life to enable them to still contribute in some way? They may not be able to do the cooking or cook a meal like they used to, but how can we still involve them in that task? It may be cutting up the veggies, or it may be, setting the table. How can we still engage them? And I think it really comes down to having a really good daily routine. Routine's really important for someone living with dementia. Not, a rigid daily routine. Things can change, but I think it's really important to have that consistency and really support the carers to get that person living with dementia, engaged throughout the day.
Yeah. So routines, are there any other things that we can do to help support people to do things like continue? What are some strategies and tools that you use?
One tool that I find is really helpful, especially if someone's got that apathy and really they come across as really unmotivated, is getting them or asking them for help. So, for example, it might be that you've got a broom and you want to help them with this. You want them to help you with the sweeping. So, really asking them for their help. I find that it changes the activity. So it's not so much about the activity that they're doing, it's more that they feel like that they're helping you. Lots of domestic-like activities. So they're the activities that I guess are deeply ingrained in the brain that they still can do generally. So yeah, things like sweeping and dusting, folding the laundry, raking the leaves, those types of everyday activities that you can do every day. We've got a lady, quite a few ladies that we support who have been the homemakers, and so we've supported the carers to have, you know, a real laundry basket and an activity laundry basket where they will provide the laundry basket to their wife during the day and ask for their help with folding it, and then at the end of the day they'll scrunch it all up again and then have it ready for the next day. So I think it's, you know, it's trying to look at ways that we can create activities where there's no goal in sight, there's no right or wrong way to do things. I think, you know, what tends to happen with carers that we've supported is that they will, you know, they'll say things like, well, she can't do the laundry anymore. You know, she doesn't know how to use the washing machine, or, you know, she forgets, or she just can't work out how to do it. And I think it's trying to support the carers to, you know, as OTs, we're really good at breaking down the task into steps, whereas carers often struggle with that. And I think it's, you know, really trying to educate them on, we're not here to try and do the laundry like, you know, Mary used to do the laundry. We're trying to get her engaged, and it's not about having, you know, the laundry done and, you know, folded up, neatly put away. It's about keeping her engaged and doing parts of that activity with help. Or, you know, I had a carer that said, oh, I'd really love for Mary to do, you know, dust the whole house. And, you know, we really had to pull him back and go, hey, you know, maybe that's not achievable. Maybe we can just start with the lounge room and then go from there.
Yeah, exactly. Those achievable, just right challenges. And it sounds like what you're saying is it's really about the process, not the product. Yeah. It's about the doing and the engagement rather than the final product or whatever the result of that is.
Yeah, it's really about lowering expectations. And exactly, you're 100% right. It's not about, you know, trying to achieve something. It's about the doing. And I heard somewhere that, I heard a quote somewhere, and it said, and it was, joy is an outcome measure, basically. So if we're seeing joy in that person, no matter, you know, if they're getting the puzzle right or they're not doing it at all, if they're happy with it and they're, you know, enjoying the process, and then that's the best outcome.
100%. 100%.
Yeah.
I remember when my nan was in this aged care, she was in an aged care facility. You know, I was so grateful for some of the nursing staff to come in who would just paint her nails. And she enjoyed that, the engagement, the social aspect. You know, that was something that she'd always used to have done. Her nails were always beautifully painted. And to me, my heart was just so full because I couldn't be there with her. And to have people that care and that bring her joy, something that, you know, brings her joy, that's what we're aiming for here. It's not about trying to retrain, you know, she was just at this point where it was just like, you know, how can I squeeze the joy out of the last few days, weeks, months of my life? And it's really coming back to, again, that the interest, the spirituality, what's important to them, how they want to live their life their way. And that's what I always, you know, talk about, is how can we help people live their life their way? Because, you know, we might come in with this lens and this perspective that this is what it looks like. This is how, you know, people have to live, or you have to be independent. You know, like our goal is to achieve independence. What if people don't want to be independent? What if they want to be interdependent and they're happy to rely on their family and their family's happy to provide for them? I think it's really just a big reshift and a reframe around how we do our work. And, and into independence, and is that important to them, and just asking questions and being more curious.
I think, and it's really about just getting down on a deeper level with your clients and really getting to know them. And I know we really strongly value, those initial sessions that we have with a person, and we spend an hour and a half with them, then that's perfect. We get so much information from them. We get really good conversation, and you can really, really identify what that person values and, what they want out of their life. You can't get that in a 15-minute, half an hour consultation.
I could do a week-long initial assessment. Like, honestly, like because you only scratch, even in an hour and a half, 2 hours, even in 5 hours, you're just scratching the surface of, and it takes that time to build rapport before they tell you what they really want to do, and not just kind of tell you what they think they need to say to answer the question right, so they don't get sent to a nursing home or whatever it is. There's so much fear and anxiety around this. And if we can be that health professional that comes in, that listens, that is curious, that really has a desire to understand what they want without bringing in any, confronting jargon or big things that they don't understand, we can change things. We can make an impact.
Yeah, definitely. And one of the points that you made before around, we have these preconceived ideas. One example that pops up in my head is, particularly in the aged care facilities, where dole therapy often is perceived to be, a childlike approach. Why would we give people living with dementia doles? And
Can you tell me what dole therapy is? Because I'm not really familiar with it.
So dole therapy is just a word, I guess, just,
I can imagine what it is, but
it's around the use of doles in supporting a person with dementia to feel, I guess, or to do an activity that's meaningful to them, if that's what they find enjoyable. And a lot of people that I've come across in aged care will sort of look down on that, and even children of people living with dementia really get quite upset about their loved ones using doles. And I think it's really just around re-educating and going, look, if your mum or if dad is really finding benefit, and you can see their face and there's joy in their face when they're interacting with this dole, then that's what we want to see. It's I think we have this, idea in our head that, we've got these rules in our head, people with dementia should be doing this or they shouldn't be doing that. And, doles are for children, but at the end of the day, if they're finding joy in that activity, then that's the best thing that you can hope for, really.
So can I ask, just to get a visual, what does dole therapy look like for a person with dementia? What do you do? How do you facilitate this? Or is it just you give them a dole and they find joy playing with it, or do you try and facilitate activities around it?
Yeah, so you might facilitate like a bathing activity. So you may undress the baby and give it a bath, change its nappy. It might be just, a lot of the time it's just around holding the baby and just finding comfort in that. So it it's different for everyone, and some people may not find giving the baby a bath enjoyable. They may just enjoy holding it. So it really is different for everyone. But some people really do not like it. You can tell when you go to offer them a dole, no, don't want to borrow that. But then some, really, really, really love it. So
I wonder what it is about that, because I know obviously there is that link. I think there's been a lot of studies done with children who come into nursing homes and the joy that brings, and they sing songs, or the kids will do a dance, or they just have a chat and conversation, and it is that connection with the younger generation that just sparks something within them. I wonder if it's similar to that, or if it just brings them back to that time. It's very interesting.
Yes. Yeah.
And I think it comes back, like the hesitancy around this, because I can imagine, like, I'd question it. I'd kind of be like, why is Nana holding a doll? Like, what's she doing? Like, what? I think there needs to be a lot of education, and even just to be a mirror or reflection for other people's belief systems around this. Like, our belief systems are so deeply entrenched in our mind that this is what happens when you get older, and this is what it looks like, and this is what you should do, and a lot of cultural beliefs as well. So really, again, back to curiosity, back to questioning, back to, okay, well, what's meaningful to this person, and what brings them joy, and what, yeah, very interesting. Thank you for bringing that up. I have never heard of it. I have heard of an older lady who had a doll. I did speaking to a friend once, and they told me about their nana or someone they knew, and I was like, oh, that's interesting, but didn't think there was such a thing as doll therapy. So kind of piecing some puzzles together in my mind.
Yeah, and if I've got one tip for any OTs out there working in aged care, if you do see a doll laying on the table, put it back in its bassinet or somewhere. I think it's really important to be treating the dolls like the people with dementia would treat them. As you can imagine, they can become quite distressed if we're holding the doll by its arm and walking around, or putting it back to where it lives, essentially. And so, I've really tried to provide that education to carers, particularly in memory support units where, there may be dolls, around the place. We treat the doll like that person with dementia would treat the doll.
Absolutely. So let's dive into the environment then. So if we're working with a person who has dementia, how can we change, adapt, modify the environment to help a person? I mean, are they living in their own home independently at home, or like with carers, or what's it looking like these days?
There's, I think the stats are around like over 70% of people living with dementia living in the community. So,
wow,
we see a lot. We see a lot of people living with dementia in their own homes. And, it could be they're living alone with a lot of support. Sometimes we'll see, a carer coming in the morning for a check, help with the medication, someone coming in at lunch, and then someone for an evening check. Or it may be that they're living with a loved one, maybe their daughter or son has moved in with them. So it looks different for everyone, and I guess at their level, their stage of dementia, in terms of what level of support they need. But the environment, if we're thinking about physical, because obviously there's your social environment as well, but if we're looking at physical environment, we really want to be, reducing clutter. So making sure that things that we don't need are sort of put away, things that a person does need are sort of out, and, there's that visual cue for them to use it. Use of contrast. So, things like, for example, with grab rails, if we're installing grab rails for someone living with dementia, often the standard grab rail will put in a stainless steel grab rail in the bathroom. But, can we look at other grab rails? Like we've used black grab rails on a white wall to provide that contrast, particularly if they have those visuospatial difficulties where, what they're seeing and, their ability to work out where things are in space is impacted by the dementia. The use of contrast is really, really important. Things like looking at safety. So how can you, make sure the environment is safe? So putting away things that may be harmful. Locking cupboards or putting child locks on cupboards is not something that it wouldn't be the first thing that I would do, because sometimes, or what I've seen in the past is people with dementia become quite agitated trying to open those cupboards, and it can just lead to more problems. So, if you really want to make sure there's a knife, put away, we'll put it somewhere where they're, not going to see it or find it. What other things? So contrast, making sure things are, readily available and seen, making sure there's access to meaningful activities. So for example, with the example around folding the washing, can we leave that washing basket on the dining table rather than putting it away in the cupboard? Because someone with dementia is not necessarily going to go, oh, that's right, there's a basket of washing in the cupboard that I need to go and fold up. So we're putting that visual cue in front of them and taking away that step of having to plan an activity when no longer they, when maybe it's, that planning is something that they can't do. What other things? Making sure, lighting is really good, reducing glare. So if you've got the sun coming in and it's really quite glary, then that can, lead to some distress or some confusion for someone living with dementia. Reducing noise. So if you've got, say if you're going to visit a loved one or someone living with dementia, making sure that the TV's turned off so that they can focus on you. Sitting like facing the window so that they can, the light shining on your face so that they can see you. Wearing name tags, I think, is really important, and just introducing yourself when you see them. So my pop's just got dementia; he's just been diagnosed with dementia, and so he still does remember me, but I've found it's really helpful for me when I go and visit him to say, hey Pop, it's your granddaughter Brooke here. So yeah, name tags if you're an OT working in the space, they're really important. That's sort of, they're the main ones. A really good document that I've found to be really helpful is by Richard Fleming and Kirsty Bennett. So they look at 10 design principles for dementia, and they're freely available on the web or on online. So if you just Google 10 design principles for dementia environments, that document by Kirsty Bennett and Richard Fleming will come up. And that,
great.
It can be a really good guide. Yeah.
One of the things my nan did, so I think we didn't really know the extent to what she was forgetting things and that. And she was managing okay. She was in her own home before she did transition. She had a fall, and after the fall, that's when she, she couldn't go back to her own place. And we started to realize there are a few more different flags that we were starting to notice. But she had the fall because at nighttime, at about midnight, she walked outside to check the mail, and to me that was an instant like, oh my God, like no one checks the mail at midnight. Like, Nan, what are you doing? And so she had the fall and then she transitioned. But what do we do? Because we can't prevent things like this happening. What's our, what's the word, like in terms of our own liability and making sure we put everything in place? And I don't know, can you talk to that?
I guess, like you said, we can't prevent everything. Like we can't prevent every bad event from happening, and I think it's just around just doing the best we can, and particularly in community aged care, I think that's where having good relationships as OTs, good relationships with your clients and their families and the care provider, if they're with a home care provider, because, that's where we can keep going in and reassessing, there's a change in function, what next, what else can we do to add to keeping this person safe in their own home. And, you can't get all of that in one session. So it's really about having that good relationship with your clients and their families, and coming in and out to help them as the dementia changes and as it progresses. No,
I think it's so true, and it's spot on, and it's what you were talking about at the beginning, like how can we be better in this space, and having that continuum of care where we're continuing to go in regularly to touch base, because things change so quickly. Like it can really change, it's different obviously dependent on every person, but with Nan, like there was a lot of change in her cognition and in her function in what I would say is a pretty short time, and because I wasn't seeing her regularly, I wasn't all over it. I didn't have that awareness. So to have an OT in there would be amazing. And I think we need to get the word out there, like to other professions, and to the community, like the impact we can make in this space and how life-changing it can be, you know, like seriously life-changing. Because if Nan didn't have that fall, she wouldn't have ended up, you know, in the hospital stint and then aged care. And, you know, there's so many complexities to that. And yeah, I think we need to be pushing this forward, this movement forward.
I think we're not good at advertising ourselves.
No,
I don't think.
let's get it out there. Why aren't we? Why aren't we out there more?
I don't know. Maybe we've always felt like that inferior profession. I'm not sure.
I think we're the most important profession, you know, because we see everything. We don't just focus on communication. We don't just focus on movement. We focus on doing. We focus on everyday activities. And we might, you know, see that they have a communication challenge or a movement challenge or a medical issue or something, and we can refer off. But other professions are so laser focused on whatever their thing is that they may not notice the things that we see with our really big telescoped out lens.
Definitely. And I guess, you know, it got me thinking, you know, I look at even just friends, you know, my friends that will go to certain professions regularly, you know, they might go fortnightly or monthly, and they'll spend money regularly on seeing, you know, different health professionals. But then when I look at OT, it's not something that people would go, oh, you know, even looking at health insurance, OT is not, it's not recognised like other professions. So there's lots of work to do. And I think I guess it's us as OTs in the driver's seat to try and get that word out there, isn't it? No one else is going to do it for us.
Yeah. And this is what the OT lifestyle movement's all about, is empowering us, giving us the courage and the community to leverage off each other so we can create bigger impacts. Yeah.
Definitely.
Ripples of change. Before we finish up, I did want to touch on something that we spoke about, and that was looking at residential dementia care differently and the small scale home model of care. Can you talk to us about this? Because this is not my area. This is all new to me. I'm peds OT, so
it's definitely foreign for you. I guess, you know, when we look at residential aged care traditionally, particularly here in Australia, you know, we see a real institutional model of care. So I don't know what your experience has been like with your nana or, you know, just in general, but, you know, we see large scale dementia facilities with, you know, over 50, 80 beds, if not more, long corridors, strict routines, medication trolleys out during meal times. You know, a real institutionalized type feel. And I think that model doesn't work for most people living with dementia, just because of the nature of dementia. And we've seen for quite a few years different models in other countries, like in America and Europe, of the small scale dementia home like model. You may have heard of the dementia villages.
No, what are
dementia, like the Hogway Dementia Village. I think that's somewhere over in the Netherlands. So they're basically these communities or villages, they call them, where they have you know, different units for people living with dementia, and they have a cafe, they have their own little shopping sort of centre where the person with dementia can go and, you know, get their trolley and do their shopping and, you know, pay for it. They have cafes, so, you know, lots of places to walk around. So it's a really inclusive sort of space where the person with dementia can continue to live their life, you know, like they would have before they had dementia. So there's lots of different models out there, and in Australia we're starting to see some more small scale dementia homes sort of pop up around the place. But essentially, sort of the model that I'm looking at here in our community of Port Lincoln is just a home, a sort of normal looking home on a residential street, say, you know, 8 beds, where house members live that live with dementia. They have 24-hour care from a carer, and they have a big yard, they have a beautiful dining table where they all sit and have their meals. They help cook, they help, you know, do the light cleaning duties, they go on regular outings. So they live sort of a normal type life. They're not locked away in a facility, but they're still having access to that 24-hour care, because that's, what they need. It's no longer for them to live safely in their own home anymore. So I would love to see more of that type of care being offered around the place.
That was incredible. Like the Dementia Village, or what was it called?
Dementia Village? Yeah.
That is just like the dream. And that sounds like something like an OT could invent, right? Like, has an OT created this? And if not, why? Like, why aren't we in these spaces? Like, where are the, we are so forward thinking, and why aren't we, the other day it was interesting, even on the news, I saw now Woolies here in Australia have these little shopping centres for kids who have special needs, and they run them. So they get practice at, I think they might even be in schools or near schools, like these little Woolworths. It's just like a corner store though. And they've got all the items, all the shopping, I don't even know what to say, everything that a sort of normal little grocery would have, a grocery store.
Yeah.
And they get real customers, real people from the community come in and purchase, and the kids with these different needs are able to practice. They're able to learn their social skills, they're able to learn money handling, all these skills that they need potentially before they go out and get a job at the Woolies in town. And I'm thinking, like, did an OT create this? And if not, why? Like, we know, like, how often are we trying to support kids with different needs to learn these life skills? And I just feel like, again, like with all this, like, where are we? Are we creating this? Like, we have the knowledge, we have the background, we have the skills, we have everything we need to be creating these bigger things. And I want to be supporting more OTs. So if anyone out there has innovative ideas, let me know. I'd love to hear it. And, can we spark this revolution? Can we share it on the podcast? And who knows who it'll connect with, right? Like, I just feel like there's more we can be doing in this space. We have so much untapped potential.
Yes. And I think, the word entrepreneur never, I thought, oh, I'm not an entrepreneur, but if we've got an idea and we want to see change, we are, and we can really do that as OTs. I think you're 100% right. Our training really puts us in a good position to work in so many different spaces, in so many different areas, in so many different roles. And we really do have skills to create change and do big things. And the world's our oyster, I think, as OTs.
Well, I hope we see those villages come to Australia. I hope we see them all over the world, because it sounds like the dream, right? Like they get to, it's such a different feeling to, what you call, quote unquote, those institutionalized dementia care units and settings that, maybe they're a thing of the past. We need to move forward. And how can we better support people with dementia to feel included, to feel valued, to feel needed and wanted, and to allow them to engage in activities that bring them joy.
Yeah, totally agree.
Awesome, Brooke. Well, let's start to wrap it up. I've learned so much. I'm thrilled by this conversation. Thank you. We got 3 rapid fire questions to close it off. So the first one is, in one sentence, how do you describe OT?
I had to think about this. It's not really how I describe OT, but I think if you become an OT, you never really work a day in your life. That's my experience of OT anyway. It's such an amazing profession that it doesn't feel like work for me.
I love that. And I think there will be some people who are maybe in the wrong, maybe they're in the right profession of OT, but in the wrong area. And they've just got to find their thing. Like, I feel like there's so much diversity and there's so many different areas that we can work in. But you've just got to find the right area. Like, who do you want to work with? Who do you want to help? Where's the problem? How can you support people in that space, whatever that space is? Yeah.
That's a really good point. Yeah.
Awesome. Number 2, what's one healthy lifestyle habit listeners can implement today?
I think, exercise is always, up there on the pedestal. I think that's really important. But I think gratitude, I think being grateful and practicing gratefulness every day. One thing that I've started to do over the past few months is write down 3 things that I'm grateful for each day. And I think that's really helped my mindset. And yeah, I guess it's been a really positive thing for me. So being grateful and practicing it on a daily basis is something that is free and really powerful.
I love that. And that's even a ritual that we could use with our elders. What are you grateful for today? Like, what's something, and just reminding them. And if you could only offer one piece of advice to OTs, what would it be?
I would say that if you've got something that you're really passionate about, but you're hesitating, just do it. I think if it's not you, then who is it going to be? And I think that really resonates with me. For so long I've been wanting to support people with dementia in aged care, and there was a lot of things holding me back. I had a really good job. I was working in a government position, quite stable, and leaving that position and sort of working in the aged care and dementia space as a sole OT was really scary, and I didn't know if I'd have enough income to be able to pay the bills, but it all worked out in the end. And I think that was because of my passion. And I think if you're passionate about something, it'll always work out, because you have that real inner drive in yourself that will prevent you from failing. You'll be able to do it.
Love that.
So yeah.
Awesome. So how can our OTs and OT students and OT assistants, or whoever's listening to this right now, how can they find out more about you? Where are you on socials and your website?
Yes, so you can find me at holisticoccupationaltherapy.com.au if you just Google. And on Instagram, it's Holistic Occupational Therapy too, I think.
Yeah, I think it is.
I think it is, yeah. So yeah, we've got a presence on Instagram and on our website too. So
you're pretty lucky to score that Instagram name, Holistic Occupational Therapy.
Yeah, I know. There is another one, but I think it's Holistic OT. So
yeah, there's a few others actually. There's a few holistic OTs with different variations. So yeah. Awesome.
No. So, yeah.
Thank you so much, Brooke. I've learned so much, and I know everyone who is tuning in right now has got a lot of takeaways, a lot of things to think about, a lot of things to ponder, a lot of things to push forward through and create the change that they want to see. So
thank you very much for having me.
Awesome.